Hi, and welcome to Karen's Kitchen Easy. Together, with our kitchen basics, tips, and tricks, we're going to make you the star of your kitchen. If you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And check out the link below this video. It will take you to Karen'sKitchenEasy.com, where you can find a printable version of today's recipe. And remember, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But wait, it is easy, and you can do it too. Today's recipe is your favorite bread pudding. Bread pudding is actually a very old dish, and we're going to start with a firm bread. The bread that I have here, as you can see, is a very large loaf, and I've actually taken some of it off already because it makes great French toast. It's called panettone. It's an Italian bread. And as you can see, it has some little raisins in it and actually some citron also. But you don't have to use panettone. If you can find it, there's another great bread called challah, which is a Jewish bread. It's a braided bread. It's spelled C-H-A-L-L-A, and that has a nice body to it. You can also get a Hawaiian bread or even a sourdough bread. You want a bread that's a little eggy, has some color to it, and is nice and firm. That is very important because it really affects the texture of your finished dish. So anyhow, we have a pound of our wonderful panettone bread here. And also in our recipe, we're going to add 8 eggs that you can see before us here. Also, a 1.25 cups of sugar and 2 cups of half and half and 2 cups of milk. Now we're also going to add about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and because I love raisins in my bread pudding, I'm going to add about a 1/2 cup of extra raisins to it. Now you don't have to do this, and you could even do a bread without raisins. This is my personal preference. So those are our ingredients. And once again, be sure you get a nice firm bread. Don't get a white bread like you can buy in any grocery store, because this is a bread that needs to be firm. So we're going to start and mix up our eggs and milk and sugar. And actually what we're doing here is we're forming a custard, and that's going to be the binder of our bread pudding. So we've got our 8 eggs in a bowl here, and we're just going to take a whisk, or you can take a fork, whatever you have, and blend the eggs. You want to beat them until they have a nice consistency, nice light yellow color, and the albumin is all broken up. Now you can do this in a blender or a food processor if you want. For just today's purposes, I'm just using a whisk and a bowl. So blend the egg yolks up nicely. To that we're going to add our 1.25 cups of sugar and blend that up again. And I have a feeling this bowl is going to get a little full. We'll see if we can make this work. So we have our sugar and eggs all beaten together. And to that, we're going to add our we'll add the cream first, the half and half. So we have our 2 cups of half and half in here, and we are starting to get a little full. And let's add the vanilla next. So our teaspoon of vanilla, and just stir it in. And then the 2 cups of milk. And we are pretty full here. I'm just going to stir this around a little bit, try to get it all incorporated. And if you want to put the milk in the microwave for about 30 seconds and warm it up, your sugar will actually dissolve a little bit better. Not more than 30 seconds, because you don't want hot milk. You don't want to run the risk of cooking your eggs. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut our bread into about 1-inch cubes. Doesn't have to be exact, and we're not going to cut the crusts off because we want that wonderful homemade sort of peasanty look and texture to it. It gives a great color to the final dish. So we're just cutting our bread into slices, and then we'll cut those slices into cubes. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But just small enough that they can pack into the dish really well. When we're finished with the bread here, I know we've got a little few crumbs, but that's all right. When we're finished with cutting the bread into cubes, then you can see them forming there, we're going to put them into an oven-proof dish because this is going to be baked. And at this point, you're probably going to want to turn your oven on to 350 degrees and get it ready. And I'm using a serrated knife here, as you can see. A serrated knife is just a knife that has a bumpy edge to it, sometimes a wavy edge, and it cuts bread really well without crushing it. And you don't want to crush the bread because you want them to stay nice and fluffy. So we have all our bread cut up into cubes, and now we're going to move everything aside and get our oven-proof dish. And again, this can be a dish that is going to look nice to put on the table because it does make a nice serving piece. So we're going to just loosely pile our bread in here and make it even so you don't have a big lump in the center, but kind of spread them out to where it's even around the dish. Now, at this point, I'm actually going to add my raisins. The reason I'm adding them now is because I don't want them to all settle to the bottom or lay on the top. So I'm just going to sprinkle them in. And when I'm done, I'm just going to move the bread around a little bit to let those raisins sort of sift through the bread a little and settle into the center of my bread pudding. So there we have our bread and raisins together in a dish. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pour the custard that we have just made over our bread cubes in the dish here. And so we have a very full bowl here, so I'm just going to have to be very careful. I'm just going to use a little bowl to scoop it out and try to evenly distribute it around your bread cubes. Just keep pouring until you can see that the bread is soaking up all of this wonderful custard. And again, you can be a little creative here. Instead of raisins, you might choose another fruit to put into it, or you could always put little chocolate chips and have a chocolate custard. I mean a chocolate bread pudding. That's a delicious variation on it. Or you can be a purist and have no fruit whatsoever in it. There are so many things you can do with bread pudding to make it yours and make it special. So just keep pouring the custard in until everything is all saturated. And when we're done with that, we're not going to put it in the oven just yet. We're actually going to let it set on the counter for 15 minutes to an hour, because that's going to help that bread to soak up all of that wonderful custard so you don't have any dry spots in your bread pudding. So we're just pouring this over our bread cubes. And as you can see, I didn't get this mixed up really well because my bowl was too full. But if you have a little bit of extra egg here, try to kind of stir it in with the milk and the sugar as you pour it. And this is going to be nice and full here. And there you can see the bread really is getting saturated. And if you're concerned about the bread not soaking up all of the great custard, you can even put a plate on top of your bread pudding as you're letting it soak to make sure all of those pieces of bread soak up that milk. So here we are, all in our pan, and we're going to let it sit now for about 15 minutes to half an hour. And come over and check it every once in a while and be sure that bread is all pushed down into the milk, and keep pressing it down again to be sure that it's all soaked up. So then after we've let it soak for a while, into the oven it's going to go for about an hour. And here we are, it's all finished. It's got some beautiful color on top, and the way you can tell it's done is if the center is puffy, if it really puffs up well. If it doesn't puff up, you're going to put it back in the oven for about 5 more minutes, because that's going to guarantee that the center is done. Also check to be sure the center is not shiny. That's going to show us also that it is done. Now we're going to put a little bit of this in our bowl. We have a wonderful piece of bread pudding here. It's nice and light and fluffy and delicious. And I'm going to show you a wonderful way to serve it. So we've got a serving of our bread pudding in the bowl, and I actually have made up something called boiled custard. Now this is a British dish, and it's made from a powder plus milk and sugar, and it's actually just like a very thick eggnog. We're going to pour it around and over our bread pudding, and this again just gives it another level of flavor. You don't have to do this. This is just something I like to do. And I also have some cherry preserves that I've thinned out just a little bit with water and then put them in the microwave for just about 20 seconds to thin out. And I'm going to put just a little bit of these cherry preserves on top. And again, it's another layer of flavor. And there you have it. a delicious bread pudding. So just remember, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But wait, it is easy, and you can do it too. So I'll see you next time on Karen's Kitchen Easy.